you exactly what it is. And then you have to inquire further to make sure it's not just a coincidence, not a lucky guess. Where did you lose it? And he has to tell you, oh, last time I saw it, it was over there. And if it matches the approximate location, you are allowed to give it to him. Or if you find an object, you have to tell him, I found an object, let's say a piece of jewelry. You tell him, what did you lose? And he has to tell you, I lost earrings. What kind? What material they're made out of? Did they have a stone or not? What shape? What size? Where did you lose it? And only if he tells you all the signs clearly, then you give it to him. So shall you do for any lost object of your brother. You shall not hide yourself. Now, verse 4 speaks about a mitzvah to help a Jew with his burdens. You shall not see the donkey of your brother or his ox falling on the road. You shall surely stand them up with him. And from here we also learn that if someone is carrying heavy objects, you have to help them to carry. If a Jew is struggling with something, we have a commandment, mitzvah, to help out. Verse 5 speaks about prohibition of wearing garment of the opposite gender. Male garb shall not be on a woman, and a man shall not wear a woman's garment. And this includes clothing, and it includes jewelry, and it includes weapons. A woman is not supposed to carry weapons for honor. For self-protection she may, but for honor, as men used to carry swords, a woman is not allowed. What is the reason for this? Besides the obvious reason that we want men to behave like men and we want women to behave like women, we want men to remain men and we want women to remain women, there is also a practical reason, and that is morality. We don't want men to dress up like women and go into their bathroom or into their room and do something improper. We want women to see from far away, this is a man. He is not my husband. I have to be careful with him. And Rabbi Avigdor Miller says, similarly, why is it that the custom for women is to have long hair and for men to have short hair? A man is not supposed to have long hair like a woman. It is in order that women should see from far away who is coming towards them. And if they see that it's a man approaching, they should be careful and possibly walk away or run away. And if they see it's a woman approaching, it's safe to stay. And therefore, a man is not allowed to wear women's garments, and he's not allowed to wear makeup, and he's not allowed to have long hair. That they should not do immoral acts. Same thing for a woman. A woman is not supposed to have a man's haircut, short hair. A woman is not supposed to wear pants or a jacket like a man, because we don't want her to mingle among men. Now, verse 6. Sending away the mother bird from the nest before taking the eggs or chicks. If a bird's nest happens to be before you on the road, on a tree or on the ground, doesn't belong to you. You happen to see it in the wild. And young birds or eggs in the nest, and the mother is roosting on the young birds or the eggs. You're not allowed to take the mother with the young. So you cannot take the eggs while the mother is still on them. You cannot take the chicks while the mother bird is still sitting on them. And you cannot take away the mother, because the eggs or the little chicks are going to die. So what's you're supposed to do? You shall surely send away the mother and take the young for yourself, so that it will be good for you and you will prolong your days. When we show sensitivity, we show kindness to even birds and animals, Hashem shows kindness towards us. This also teaches us about the greatness of a mother. We have control over all animals. We can use them as we wish. We can make them work for us. We can kill them. We can shear them, take their wool, their milk, their children. We can do anything with animals. One thing we cannot do is kill a mother while it is performing its mother's duties. If a bird is doing what a mother should, protecting her babies, she becomes invincible. We're not allowed to shoot it. We cannot kill it. We have to send her away. Only when she will stop carrying out her duties, that's when we can take her eggs or chicks. But if she refuses and she just sits there, cannot take the eggs. And from there, the Torah wants us to appreciate our own mothers. How great they are. They are bringing life into the world, just like Hashem created human being. Mothers are doing the same. Just like Hashem is taking care of those in need, mothers are nursing and taking care of the baby for thousands of days. Just like Hashem saves our life every moment, so too mothers save lives of their babies by protecting them and feeding them every day of their life. And therefore, we have to apply even more respect to a human mother, whether ours or anyone else's, learning it from the way we have to treat the birds. Now, verse 8, when you build a new house, you shall make a fence for your roof, so that no one falls off. In the olden times, they had flat roofs, and they used to use them regularly. They would eat and sleep there, walk there, talk there. It was like an extra floor of their house. And therefore, the Torah says you have to build a ma'akeh, meaning a protective fence. And from here we learn that we have to make sure that we don't have anything dangerous on our property. We have to remove anything that can hurt a human being. We have to put signs, we have to put fences. Now, in the next 3 sentences we learn about forbidden mixtures, and there are 3 of them. You shall not sow your vineyard with a mixture. This is called kilai hakerem. If you have a vineyard, you cannot plant other plants in it. And the prohibition is for 2 kinds of seeds besides grape seed. If a person does, the whole thing becomes forbidden. Number 2, in verse 10, you shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Another forbidden mixture is working 2 kinds of animals at the same time. Different animals have different strengths, different habits, and you don't want them to suffer. One is weaker, one works in a different way, and it will place unnecessary burden on the weaker one or the one that's not used to it. So you can use 2 cows, you can use 2 donkeys. You can use 2 horses, but you cannot mix them. And the third kind of mixture in verse 11, you shall not wear combined fibers of wool and linen together. This is called shatnez or kilaim. We cannot mix wool and linen in the same garment. And therefore, garments that are made out of wool, we have to check to make sure they don't have any linen. There are special labs, people who are trained, and they check the garments to make sure. They check the fibers, the threads, the material in all parts of the garment to make sure that it does not contain any opposite material. If it's linen, it shouldn't contain any wool, and if it's wool, it shouldn't contain any linen. Verse 12, mitzvah of tzitzit. You shall make for yourselves twisted threads on the 4 corners of your garment with which you cover yourself. A man is supposed to wear tzitzit strings on his garment if his garments have 4 corners. Now, customarily, we buy specifically the garment of 4 corners and we wear it under our shirts. Some people wear it over their shirts. And in addition to that, we have a special garment that we wear only for prayer. That is called talit gadol, the large garment. And it has 4 corners, and we fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit with it while we are praying. But at the same time, we are wearing a garment underneath that we fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit with as well. Now, next paragraph is teaching us about not saying falsehood about your spouse. What's called defamation. If a man marries a wife and then hates her, and he makes a false accusation against her, spreading a bad name against her, and he says, I married her thinking that she's a virgin and she's not. Now, who do we believe? She says that she was at the time when they got engaged. And he says this is maybe true, but by the time we got married, you were not anymore. That means something happened between engagement and marriage. And therefore, what he is actually accusing her of is adultery, which is punishable by death. Because a woman that is betrothed, engaged, is considered married, according to Jewish law. And she is not allowed to have relations with any other man in the world. And he's telling her, you were engaged to me, I got engaged to you on the assumption that you are a virgin, and I now claim that you're not when I married you. And she says, no, I was. You're lying. So what should they do? The father of the girl and her mother should take and bring proof of the girl's virginity to the elders of the city. So what happens? What kind of proof they need? We don't trust the man's words. This is not a religion where we kill a person just because someone said something bad. We need 2 valid witnesses, and the witnesses cannot be related. So the husband is not a valid witness. Whatever the husband says doesn't count. So in order to accuse her, the husband had to bring 2 witnesses that saw her committing adultery, or at least they saw her being alone in a room with a man she's not allowed to be with. That's the only way he can prove. It's not about the sheet with blood on it. It's about 2 witnesses. And how can the parents prove it otherwise? Bringing blood-stained sheet is not going to help, because they're going to say, how do we know where it's from? Maybe you killed the chicken and poured blood on it. The only thing that can help is 2 other witnesses. The witnesses that, if the witnesses say, no, it didn't happen, then there's a conflict between witnesses and we throw out the whole case. But if they bring witnesses that will say, how can you, to the first witnesses, how can you say that you saw our daughter committing adultery in such a place and in such a time, when at that time you were with us in a different place? It's impossible for you to be in two places at the same time. Means that your testimony is false. And we believe the second set of witnesses, and as we learned in previous Parshiot, we do to the first set of witnesses, the false witnesses, what they conspired. Since they tried to kill this lady, we kill them. Now, in addition to punishing the witnesses, verse 18, the elders of the city shall take that man and punish him. They give him lashes for hiring false witnesses. And they shall fine him 100 silver coins. And she shall remain with him as a wife. He cannot divorce her all his days. The sages, the Torah takes away from this man ability to divorce his wife, unless she wants it. If she says, I don't need such a husband, then he gives her a divorce. But if she still wants to be married to him, he is forced to be married to her for the rest of his life. However, verse 20, if this matter was true, the lady actually did commit adultery. Verse 21, then they shall take the girl to the entrance of her father's house, and they shall pelt her with stones, and she shall die. Any married woman that commits adultery deserves death penalty by stoning. Now, verse 22 speaks about a regular case of adultery. If a man will be found lying with a woman who is married to a husband, then both of them shall die, because they both did it willingly. They're both guilty of adultery. Now, what if the woman is not married? She is only betrothed. She is only engaged. Verse 23, a virgin girl who is betrothed to a man, and a man finds her in a city and lies with her. They are doing it willingly because it's the city. They must both die, pelt them with stones, because the girl did not cry out in the city. She was in a public place. If she would cry out, people would come to help her. The fact that she didn't scream shows that she wanted it, and therefore she is guilty. However, what if it was a rape? But if it is in the field that the man will find the betrothed girl, and the man will seize her and lie with her, it was a rape, only the man who lies with her shall die. But the girl is not guilty because she was forced. Even if she would cry, there were no people around, it was in a field. Now, verse 28. What if it's a rape of an unmarried single girl who is not even engaged? If a man will find a virgin maiden who was not betrothed and takes hold of her, he forces her and lies with her, the man shall give the father of the girl 50 silver coins, and she shall become his wife. He is obligated to marry her and support her. He cannot divorce her all his life. He becomes obligated to support her financially for the rest of his life. Imagine if such a thing would be established in our society. Through this, we would prevent all cases of rape. If the man knows that I'll have to pay her spousal support for the rest of my life, and I cannot divorce her, no one would dream of doing such a despicable act. Now, a few more mitzvot about marriage. chapter 23, verse 1, a man is not allowed to marry the wife of his father, even if she is not his mother. Any woman that the father was married to, even if he divorced her, is forbidden to the son for the rest of his life. Verse 2, laws of forbidden marriages. A man with damaged reproductive organs, like crushed testicles or severed organ, may not marry a Jewish woman. He is allowed to marry a convert, but not a Jewess who was born Jewish. Verse 3, a mamzer, a child born from a forbidden union, shall not enter the congregation of Hashem, which means a mamzer is not allowed to marry a Jewish woman. He is allowed to marry a convert or another mamzeret, but their children remain mamzerim for all generations. Verse 4, two nations are not allowed to enter the congregation of Hashem, meaning marry Jewish women, Ammon and Moab. The men from Ammon and Moab cannot marry Jewish women ever. They can convert and they can marry other converts, but not Jewish people. Verse 8, restricted marriages. Edomite, people from Edom, and Egyptian people may only marry Jewish people, both men and women, in their third generation. They have to convert, marry another convert for the first generation. Their children must also marry converts, and only in their third generation may they marry a Jewish person. Now, verse 10 and on, sanctity of the Jewish camp, purity of the Jewish camp. A man who will not be clean because of a nocturnal seminal occurrence, he becomes impure, and therefore he has to go outside of the camp, meaning the camp of the Levites, where the Beit HaMikdash is. He can still be in the Jewish town, but cannot enter the temple. He shall immerse himself in water, and when the sun sets, he may enter in the midst of the camp. So the impurity of seminal emission lasts only one day, and if a person goes to the mikveh that day, at night he becomes pure. Now, verse 13. A Jewish town or camp must have bathrooms. We're not allowed to just go wherever we want, for obvious reasons, for hygiene, as well as since we speak the words of Torah, since we say blessings, we mention God's name, our surroundings must be clean, and only specific places that everyone knows have to be bathrooms. You shall have a place outside the camp, and to it shall you go outside. That's what's called outhouse. And we cannot just leave our excrement anywhere. We have to dig a hole and cover it. You shall have a shovel in addition to your weapons, and it will be that when you sit outside, you shall dig with the shovel and cover your excrement. Our Holy Torah does not leave anything untouched. It talks about every aspect of life and gives us instructions of how to live good life. Now, next comes proper clothing. Hashem, your God, in verse 15, walks in the midst of your camp to protect you from your enemies. So your camp shall be holy, so that God will not see a shameful thing among you and turn away from behind you. When immodest clothing is worn among the Jewish people, Hashem removes his divine presence, and then, God forbid, dangerous things might happen. Now, verse 16. You shall not turn over to his master a slave who escaped. If a non-Jewish slave from another country runs away from his master and enters the land of Israel acts as a refuge city. And any slave that enters the boundaries of the land of Israel is protected. He is not allowed to be returned to his masters, even if they're Jewish. Now, verse 18. Prohibition of prostitutes. There shall not be a promiscuous woman, and there shall not be a promiscuous man. Not a female and not a male prostitute are permitted. Now, verse 20. Prohibition to take interest. You shall not cause your brother to take interest, which means this is a prohibition on the borrower. You cannot cause your brother to take interest. Don't pay interest, even if you want. However, you can cause a Gentile to take interest. You can borrow with interest from a non-Jew. A non-Jew can charge you interest, but not a Jew. Now, verse 22, laws of vows to God. When you make a vow to Hashem your God, you shall not be late in paying it. Verse 24, you shall observe and carry out what emerges from your lips. Now, verse 25 and 26, rights of a worker. Before we had Department of Labor, the Torah already provided us with certain rights that every worker has. When you come to work in the vineyard of your fellow, you may eat grapes as you desire. A worker that works with ripe grapes and harvests them, he is allowed to eat them. Verse 26, when you come into the standing grain of your fellow and you harvest the grain, you may pluck the soft or plump ears of grain with your hand and you can eat it. Just make sure you don't save for later. Just like we have a commandment that if an animal is working with food, you have to allow the animal to eat. You cannot muzzle an animal while it's working. So too a human being working with produce that's ready to be eaten, you have to allow him to eat. Now, chapter 24, laws of divorce and remarriage. If a man marries a woman and lives with her, and then she didn't find favor in his eyes, and he wrote her a bill of divorce, what we call a get, a document of divorce, and she shall marry another man. And the later man hated her as well and wrote her a bill of divorce. She's divorced second time. Her first husband shall not again take her to become his wife. Remarriage is permitted as long as the woman did not marry anyone else. Once she marries another man, she can no longer go to her original husband, even if she receives a divorce from the second husband. The law of the first year of marriage. When a man marries a new wife, he shall not go out to the army. He shall be free for his home for 1 year and make his wife happy. Here we learn that the first year of marriage is very important. And you should limit your public activities during the first year and be more available for each other. Now, verse 6, limitation on taking collateral from borrowers. One shall not take a lower or upper millstone as a pledge, which means you're not allowed to take a collateral for a loan, something that is used to make food. Law of kidnapping, verse 7. If a man is found kidnapping a person and enslaves him or sells him, that kidnapper shall die. Kidnapping is punishable by death penalty. verse 8, prohibition